Physics chapter 30 theory video 7. Now we are going to move on to positron emission tomography, that is the PET scanning machine. So this is another modern machine that has many different uses, mainly dealing with monitoring and treatment of cancer, heart diseases, then gastrointestinal disorders, and also brain functions. The basis of PET operation is different from CT and ultrasound. In CT and ultrasound, what happens is the patient is observed from outside, but in PET it is using a radio tracer. We look at the patient from the inside. What happens is this radio tracer is injected into a vein. It travels around the body, and this tracer will be absorbed by organs and tissues, and that radiation will produce an image. So there are different kinds of radio tracers used in PET. Mostly a glucose based molecule, which is going to be a radioactive nuclide, fluorine 18, is going to be attached to that. So this is known as fluorodeoxyglucose. So this fluorine 18 nuclide will decay, and it will emit beta particles, a positive beta particle, which is a positron. So then when the advantage of using this is actually the purpose of this is that glucose tracer would be taken up by different organs at different rates. Because cancer cells are more metabolically active, that is they are growing, and they have high energy requirements. So as a result, they take in more glucose, and as a result, there would be more emission. So if we can observe that higher emission as a form of a brighter region in the image, then we know that that there is something to worry about. They can be used to see if there is hemorrhage, that is, if there is any brain injuries, if there is any heart disease, if there is blood leaking out somewhere. And there are many different uses, including Alzheimer's disease and dementia, etc. So for many different diseases, to diagnose the disease, these PET scans are used. Rather than looking from the outside, they can actually go into the molecular level, and from the inside it can give us a tracing, and also it can give us a clearer image as to where the problem is going to be. So when beta plus emission or the positron emission is provided, you have learned that the positron is the antiparticle of electron. So these B plus emitters are not naturally occurring isotopes. Therefore, they have to be made by firing protons at target nuclei. So these protons move through the tissues, and it will, within a very short distance, it will encounter electrons. Then the matter and antimatter will annihilate each other, and will become pure energy to form two gamma rays, and they start moving in opposite directions. So this process, the mass energy momentum is conserved, as we learned earlier, and because the initial because this energy is used to produce a specific energy for the resulting photon using E equals hf, that is Planck's constant and frequency of the photon, we can understand the specific energy and the specific frequency that the gamma ray photons would have. So as a result, we can use this understanding to figure out, that is actually in the production of the PET scanner, we can figure out how it would give the image, and as a result, we would be able to manage it in such a way that it produces the best result that we require. So the momentum of a photon is given by P equals E upon C. So energy of a photon is E equals hf, and these calculations you should be able to do. Let's write down a note on this. Positron emission tomography, that is PET scanners. Rather than looking at the patient's body from outside, like in CT scan or ultrasound, the patient's body is injected with a radio tracer which would be absorbed by organs and tissues. The radiation released by this radio tracer would be used to produce the image. Leave a line and write. Many different radio tracers are used, usually attached to a glucose based molecule. For example, radioactive nuclide fluorine 18 could be attached to this. When glucose is absorbed by a cell, it would be shown by the radiation. Cancer cells are more metabolically active, therefore they will take in more glucose and would be clearly seen. Leave a line and write. PET scanners require a radioactive isotope that decays by beta plus emission, within brackets, positron or antiparticle of the electron. When it moves through patient's tissue, within a very short distance, it will encounter an electron and annihilate their masses to become two gamma rays, two gamma ray photons moving apart in opposite directions. Both mass and energy, both mass, energy and momentum are conserved. So the mass energy of positron-electron pair would provide the energy and the momentum of the resulting photon. Energy of a photon is E equals hf. You know E is energy, h is Planck's constant, and f is the frequency of the photon. Momentum P is equal to E upon c. C is the speed of electromagnetic radiation in a vacuum, that is speed of light. So these two equations you need to know. Now, how do we produce a suitable radioisotope? Now we discussed that it is by bombarding it with a proton. So how are we going to do this? Now, we know that in magnetic fields, a charged particle that enters a magnetic field at right angles to the field will travel in a circular path. We discussed that. The cyclotron works on this principle. This is the particles that are continuously accelerated by an alternating electric field when they go around a circle. So as a result, they go in a spiral path before they are released and collide with the target nuclei. So this is the proton that we are talking about. These cyclotrons is actually used to create the radioactive isotope that we require. Now when fluorine 18 is to be produced, oxygen 18 nuclei are bombarded with protons and we get this. So because fluorine 18 has a half-life of only 2 hours, the patient is not going to be exposed to this radiation for a long time. And also, it should be made at the same place itself. So you would need a cyclotron like this to produce the required radiation or the required radioactive materials to treat the patient. If it is somewhere else, that could be a problem. So this is how it works. Magnetic field is into the plane of the page, and it goes in a spiral, and finally the bombardment will occur. Write down note. So these things you have to just remember as notes. However, this bombardment is another factor that you need to remember. Production of suitable radioisotopes for PET scanners is done by using a cyclotron which uses the principle of a charged particle entering a magnetic field at right angles to the field, traveling in a circular path. Using this principle, a proton is allowed to go in a spiral path before it collides with the target nuclei. In production of fluorine 18, oxygen 18 nuclei are bombarded with protons and the fluorine radioactive nucleus is produced. Write down O18 plus proton 1 gives you fluorine 18 9 plus neutron 10 plus gamma ray. Put a star and write down. However, fluorine 18 has a half-life of about 2 hours. As a result, it should be produced on site. Now we are going to discuss about detecting the gamma rays. So now what happens is the patient will be placed on a bed with donut shaped detectors around the patient. So when the patient is moved through these detectors, a series of slices would be made in the same way as a CT scan, but from the inside. However, most of these, it is not, there is no competition between CT and PET scanners. So most of these CT and PET scanners actually, they are a combination of both. So as a result, a better image can be obtained. So these detectors of gamma rays they consist of two parts. A crystal that scintillates, and there is a photomultiplier. What happens is when a high energy gamma ray photon falls on this incident on the crystal, the electron become excited and comes to a high energy state. When it goes through it, it loses energy, and as a result there would be, so this losing energy means it excites more electrons. So as a result, these will decay to original state when energy is lost while giving photons. These photons will be converted, photons in the sense visible light photons. They will be converted into electrical signals by the photomultiplier, and which that would be taken by a computer, and that will actually retrace the photon that was originally produced. So you don't actually have to know how it is going to happen. Now, however, this part is a little bit important, reconstruction of the image. So here what happens is in a detector, now the patient is here, the detectors are in the middle, the detectors are all around. Then the point of electron position annihilation is actually inside the patient. Then there is something called a line of response. So let's discuss how it is going to happen here. Now, this is a simplified diagram. At the same time, you need to remember that when gamma ray photons formed by the electron positron annihilation, when they travel from a point, they actually travel in a straight line because they travel in opposite directions. So that is what we refer to as the line of response. So they travel in a straight line and in opposite directions, and they can be detected on either end. So you join the two detectors, and by considering the time lapse, because there would be from here to here, it would be shorter time, and this would be a longer time. So by considering those things, the detector will make a response, because this is connected to a sophisticated computer system, and that will mark the point where it is supposed to be, and as a result it will create it will generate the image of that particular area by using how many points come along, and how many traces, how many gamma ray photons come along to either side, etc. So these details will be taken up by the computer system, and an image would be generated. Write down a note on this. Gamma rays are detected by a series of ring detectors, just like in the CT scanners. Gamma ray photons are detected by two parts of the detectors: a crystal that scintillates and a photomultiplier. When the gamma ray photon is incident on the crystal, it excites an electron to a high energy, which would go through the crystal, making other electrons excited too. When they fall back to its original state, to their original state, they lose visible light photons, which will be converted into electrical signal by the photomultiplier tube. These signals will be used by a computer that would deduce where the original photon pair was produced. This is done by using the principle that the gamma ray photons travel in opposite directions when they strike opposite directions when electron and positron annihilate each other. The direction, the dual direction through which the dual direction through which the two gamma ray photons travel is known as the line of response. I hope you understood. If you did not understand, please ask questions, and there is a summary at the end as well. So most importantly, these equations you will have to remember, and there would be theory questions that they ask. So please go through the questions also. Do the questions and see whether there's anything difficult that you don't understand. If you have anything of that sort, please ask questions. Yeah.